Okay, we are back with we did the reflections first in the water. We're gonna throw in the distant trees here, and then we are going to have a sailboat here and show a different kind of reflection that you can do with the sailboat. That is the plan, to finish up the trees at top, fix the horizon line, do some sort of sky, and then have our sailboat come up through the sky. I've got a lot of paint on my palette that I actually don't need. Okay, so this is our first video for painting water. I did wet the paper on both sides, or I forgot to film that, but it's pretty straightforward. I'm just looking to see what's the right side of this paper. I think this is the bumpy side, so we're good. And now I'm going to mix my colors. And in my case, I'm going to be using ultramarine. No big surprise here. Let's just move this water closer. So ultramarine. And this is going to be for the water that is up close to us. I'm going to be using a cerulean as we get further back. It's basically the same concept as the skies in that the color gets less saturated as you go towards the distance, and it's more saturated up front. The other option is if we end up doing this as a beach scene, maybe I'll just do that since I have this color here. You can also have the color start to have more of a warm shade to it. So the ultramarine will gradually become warmer, but maybe we'll just do it straight first. And since we're going to paint skies on top of this, I think we just keep it simple for now. So ignore that. Okay, so we have some cerulean for the background. We have some ultramarine here. We probably need a thicker mix of ultramarine. And I'm just going to use this pile here that I used previously for the sky. Okay. And we're going to use a big brush. And I'm going to start at the back of the painting. Might need a bit more cerulean here. So this is the water in the distance. My brush had a bit of dark on it. So we're just I'm gonna get that a little more water into that mixture. So I'm just gonna dye it down a little bit. And for the horizon line, I don't necessarily want it to be as stark as what I see here. So I'm just gonna blur out the horizon line and back in with my cerulean. Okay, so this is the back of the painting, and I gradually add a tiny bit more of the ultramarine into that as I work my way forward. Need a good slope on my paper. Okay, more ultramarine. Okay, more ultramarine. Okay. And I've already run out of ultramarine. But we don't want this, when I remix, I don't want all that paint on my brush because it's going to be much wetter than the paper that was there. Okay, and then I'm gradually adding in that dark as we move forward. So that's our our base of our water. This part here, the paint was a little dirty, so I'm just gonna go along that horizon. We might have a foggy sky here. Okay, now I need a thicker mixture of the ultramarine. We have too much water on this palette, so let me just tip it this way. And I can mix my ultramarine up here. And then I'm going to have a thicker mixture of my cerulean. Let's put that up here. And this is all about timing. So we need to figure out what is the right timing to add the soft waves to this. And you need a smaller brush for that as well. So I'm just going to wipe off my brush a bit. And then I'm going to put a line in like that. So these are the actual waves that would be close to the foreground. So it's not quite thick enough. Keep going into that ultramarine and try to get it thicker. So these waves that are up front, and I might just add a little tiny bit of neutral tint here, are quite pronounced. But as we get further back, they become smaller. Drying off my brush again. And try to vary them. One idea is to kind of go like this as well. You can create a shape like that. And then I'm picking up some of this cerulean. And the waves start getting smaller and closer together as we get to the background. So here, and they just kind of fade out as you get to the background as well, so I can probably pick up less paint. Going forward again, mixing a bit of that cerulean with the ultramarine that I had. More ultramarine with a bit of neutral tint. Let's just make sure we got some of that in there. So it's starting to dry, which means I can put a thicker mix on, and it will stay relatively where I put it. Okay, mix a little cerulean with this as we go back again. And the risk is having them too evenly spaced, which I kind of have here, but I think you get the idea. You know, you could just not see the spaces as you go back further. Rinse my brush, dry it off, cerulean. You know, they all kind of come together at the back. Because they're so close together. Okay, I think that's okay. These parts are a little bit too black. I think I put too much black into that mixture, but that's the idea. Okay, done. Well, maybe not. Maybe this needs a little bit more neutral tint right up front. And I like this idea of joining them. Okay, I think we're good. So that is moving water. All right, the next exercise we're going to do for water is painting reflections on water. And again, I think we'll just leave a line for the sky. And that way, if we decide that we want to paint this after the fact with a background of some sort, we can do that. So I'm just putting a horizon line across and softening that out. And then I mix my cobalt again. I didn't mix any ultramarine at this point, but we'll have to do that in another layer. So what we're going to do is do basically what we did with the last water, which is cerulean at the back. Okay. And then as we get closer to the horizon, we're going to add a little bit of cobalt into that, or into the foreground, I mean. So I'm adding more cobalt as I go. And then as I get further forward, I'm going to mix a bit of this darker shade in with that cobalt and ultramarine. Okay, and I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna into that foreground. And this will just look like the shallow water, seeing the shallow water through. Now it's a bit too brown, so I'm going to put a bit more cobalt in there and just have that move up. Now this is going to be 2 stages because we're going to do the reflections as well. Okay, a bit more cobalt back in here, and I think we're good. Okay, now the other thing you can do if you like is just dab out a little bit. We can put a sailboat that runs up into the sky if you like. We're just going to dab that out with a Kleenex, and then I'm going to dab out the boat. That's probably good enough. We'll put that boat in. It's a tiny bit bigger. We'll put that boat in as we go to the next layer and the reflections of that. Oh, I do want to show you how to do the reflections from some trees. Let's assume that there's a row of trees over here. I'm just going to make some assumptions on the colors. And while this is still wet, I can add the reflections in the water. So I'm going to go through a few different greens here and just add these in. Maybe some oranges. and these will be reflecting down into our water. Now my paper is still wet, so this is working quite well. I'm going to take a finer brush and I'm just going to deepen some of that color. So I'm going to add some cobalt into it, and right along here the color is going to be a bit richer. Maybe there's going to be some height to some of these trees. So I'm going to put some so everything is nice and soft, and I'm just alternating through the various colors that I want to include in here. Okay, and then I'm going to add some darks. Maybe there's a rock here. A couple of dark trees, and just let them flow down into the water. And taking a dry brush, just extending that further down. And then while everything is still damp, I can take the brush and do some lines in the water. So I'm cleaning my brush, I'm wiping it off on a piece of paper towel, and I'm making some lines that make it look like the surface of the water. And that's stage number 1. And then we'll go back and do the boat reflection in stage number 2. Okay, we are back with we did the reflections first in the water. We're gonna throw in the distant trees here, and then we are going to have a sailboat here and show a different kind of reflection that you can do with the sailboat. So let's start by mixing up the colors that we're going to need. So I have some ultramarine left over here, which I'm going to use. Okay. I'm going to use a bit of Imperial Purple. Okay. A little bit more ultramarine here, a bit thicker, because I'm going to mix a few greens. So we'll start with some gamboge. Okay, some gamboge. More of that. Okay, so that's a nice green. I want to kind of match it to what's above. So I'll take a couple of yellows as well. Okay, and maybe a bit more purple. Purple helps to give it some color, and I might use some of this cobalt teal as well, just in case I need some darks there. So it's going to be a bit tricky because I'd like to wet the whole thing in order to do the trees. So I might just spray this part with the water bottle and start the sky from this side and work our way across. And then we will fix the horizon line by having the sky just a little bit darker at that horizon line, and just mark off where I think the horizon line should be. The other way you can do this, because the bottom is dry, maybe we'll do that, it's a lot easier, is we will just tape it off. So I need to get my, oh, actually I have some tape right here. Let's tape it off. Bring the ruler back. It's more important that it be accurate over on this side. Okay, and then we can pull the tape off where the trees are. So let's just put it like that. Maybe I'll tape it down on this side as well. Okay. And while you got the tape out, you could even take the tape and cut out your got the top of my mask, depending on how tall you want your boat to be. And now I don't have to worry about that as much either. Is we would start at the one end and work our way back, and when we get to this portion, we're going to use the spray bottle. So I'm going to use some cerulean for the bottom part of the sky here. So I'm going to start over here and put the cerulean in. And it's going to get a bit watery as I go this way. So I'll put that water down now. And then I'm going to go into some cobalt. Paint in the way of the tape. And that's probably good enough. I can now just water that down a bit and start putting in a bit of ultramarine mixed with some cerulean cobalt. And then just when in doubt, fuzz it out. Okay, so I think that will do the trick for our sky. If we want some cloud cover in it, we can just mist some in like that. And now, in order to do the trees, I have my special spray bottle. Basically what happens with this spray is it does not go on evenly. So see how there's big dots there? I don't know if you can actually... So it's bigger dots, and that's what I'm going to use for my trees. Is just that little bit of water that gets sprayed onto where the trees are going to be. Cover the bottom of the page and just give that a little squirt. And now when I paint my trees, I'm going to just go in. Let's start with the green. I'm just going to go dancing around, and when it hits one of those spots that have the water on, it starts spreading out. So it's not quite spreading. Let's just do a little bit more. Okay, I think that's good enough. And then I'm going to alternate through the colors that I have here. I have some yellows that look like they're over here. Maybe a bit more yellow over here. Some more of this green over here. Maybe a bit of yellow into that. Okay, maybe some more blue at the bottom of this. And typically your trees on the outside of your page should be running off the page. So these ones should be taller. Okay, and then some blue. And you're seeing it a little bit now, how it's flowing into where the water marks are. And it's creating quite a nice pattern. Okay. Probably a bit more yellow over on this side. Let's get some more yellow in here. And more blue over here. Okay, so I'm just getting those, and I'm trying to leave some of these sky holes here, so that, but at the base of the trees, there's no need for so many sky holes. Okay, and then some more yellow over here, not so much water. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to start letting this drip down. So I'm going to remove this piece of tape in here. I might just put it here for now. And I'm going to carefully remove this piece of tape. Maybe we'll start over here, because it doesn't matter as much here. We have the reflections coming down. Okay, so that worked out okay. And then I can take a clean brush, tilt my paper, and just start encouraging this down. I can actually wet all the way underneath the trees with just plain water. And then start adding in some more color here. Okay, maybe this is a bit further ahead of the horizon line. Okay, something like that. Okay. So here we go. So it's actually flowing up more than it's flowing down there, which tells me there's not enough water underneath. But here I'm just looking at the colors of the trees and putting in some color to try and match that. Some yellow over here, some more yellow over here, some green in the middle here. Okay. And just encourage it on its way down. You can also drop a little bit of water, but you have to be careful with this, because if you put too much on, then you're going to lose a lot of your reflection. Bottom, so it flows better. If it's not flowing as nice as I'd like, give it a bit of spritz. Make sure I'm getting it at the bottom there. So now it's encouraging it to go down quite a bit. It's soaking up that little bit. So our next adventure here is to do our sailboat. And I need a darker mixture, but let's start fairly light so that we can define the sail and a few other things over here. So the paper is all dry, so I'm good from that perspective. Bit of dark maybe here. And then I did leave some white for the boat reflection, but it might be difficult to do the boat in white at this point, but we will see how it goes. So here we need just a line going down. Practice your line first. And then there's going to be a sail that comes out this way as well. And then okay, and then there's another line that goes out this way. Okay, so that sail has quite a curve on it, which I didn't really want, but maybe I use this as the straight sail. And then I can make this kind of the shape of the sail there. We're going to have a line that goes this way. And then our boat is actually going to be kind of shaped like this. Okay, and now I'm going to get rid of the black. And I'm going to use the blue to define this part of the sail. Okay, kind of encourage that to bleed over here. And then at the front we have one that goes like this. Oh, will probably make sense in a second. hopefully. And that the back of the boat, that would make more sense. So let's do that. Where it's going to be whiter at the top there. Okay, that looks a little bit better. This was not a boat tutorial, obviously. See if we can get this sail. We might have to use some gouache, but that's basically our boat. And then the method for reflecting the boat on the water is what I wanted to show you. So basically what you do here is it's solid at the beginning, and then as it kind of flares out in the water and these shapes, we have our sail. Okay, so it's solid here. Okay, add some blue into this. And I'm just touching the boat in a few places there. Okay, and then we have some blue. Okay, and we're going to need some gouache in order to do that part. And some of these can be out on their own. Don't have to be all together. So let's find some gouache. Now I did let it dry a little bit before I started with the gouache because I realized it was a bit too wet in order for the gouache to be that effective. So I'm using titanium white, which I guess is watercolor, not gouache. But it is white. There's Chinese white, there's Dr. Phil's bleed proof white. All of them are basically work the same way. So we can do a couple of things. We can try to fix our sail. I did put a flag on there while it was drying. But let's just put some more white onto our sail. And it's going to correct the shape a little bit because it was kind of an odd shape. Okay, and then I can also put some gouache along the front where maybe it's capturing some light. And then I want this reflection of the sail to be in the water as well. And the sail should have ended right about there, but I think we can't get too technical, can we? So basically what I want to do is I want to reflect that boat into the water. And I want to reflect the sail. Now the sail goes quite a ways up, so I think originally when I did the black, I didn't have it go up as far as it probably should have. And then the sail doesn't start right away. It's the boat first that gets reflected. So we're going to take a little bit of dark as well. Just need to find a different brush. I'm just going to use this reservoir brush. And we're just going to extend that sail up a little bit further here. Grab some more paint. It's a little bit too dark, but We want this to be further up. Okay, I think that one might make sense. And then we've got this lovely blue flag that's at the top, which would also be reflected. Something like that probably looks a bit better. Yeah, I think we're okay. Not going to get too picky on this one. You'll see the gouache kind of, it doesn't really stay too bright. Sometimes I use, this is titanium white, sometimes I use bleed proof white, so I'll just show you that. This is Dr. Phil Martin's, or PH Martin's, I guess, not Phil, bleed proof white. And it's quite chalky, but the one advantage of it is it does show up a bit more. Okay. It has a bit of a better effect. Something like that. And as it dries, that kind of fades as well. And we can throw a little bit of blue into that as well, just so the boat looks bluer. Okay, I think that is good enough. You can't get too picky here. I wanted to show you the other painting that I did in the class, and one of the big differences here is I had the darker sky at the top and the darker water, which I think really helps to add some depth to the painting. So that's the other thing you could do, is just do a wash closer to where the viewer is, that's a bit darker, and fade it out as it goes into the background.